So in answer to the question for the video of the process of how society comes into being is answered by one of Mead's theory of symbolic interaction. His theory has to do with, well, first, just to underline and provide a base for how he builds everything else, is his idea of reality. And he explains reality as something that we create as we act in and toward the world, rather than reality existing out there, we actually create it. And so one of the things that he discusses and focuses a lot on is behaviorism, the way we act, the way we behave. And he uses the model of a stimuli and response. Stimuli being the thing that we see or hear, and then response being how we behave toward it or what we do toward that thing that we hear or see. He outlines what he calls the 4 stages of the act. So we acting is an important part to his theory, because that is the very basis of how he explains that everything is created, because we create that meaning as we act and as we behave. And so the 4 stages that he talks about are 1, impulse, 2, perception, 3, manipulation, and 4, consummation. So 1, impulse, has to do with exactly what it's talking about, our immediate response to stimuli. For example, if we are hungry, we will eat. We have that impulse to eat because we're hungry. 2, perception. Perception has to do with what we see and perceive something to be and how we can respond to that. For example, if we see a delicious cake or cookie, we will respond to that because we perceive it that way. And we create that stimuli to mean that for us, that we'll eat it. 3, manipulation, has to do with how the human capacity is able to manipulate the stimuli. We have hands and we can change things, and we can even change how we respond. So, for example, if we're hungry, we can decide to eat at a later time, even though there's food there. So that's an example of manipulation. And 4th, consummation. So throughout that whole stage of the act, we finally, at the 4th stage, we actually test it out. We eat it. In the example of food and being hungry. In contrast, as far as human behavior and then animal behavior is unlike human behavior, obviously, but he explains that animals will simply eat it. They don't and can't mentally test it out in their minds as we humans do and can. And so that's how we're able to create realities that we have in society that we come to have as we create the reality surrounding it. The other things that he talks about in connection to symbolic interaction is gestures and symbols. Gestures is what he calls one of the social processes, meaning it's a social act including 2 or more people. Gestures is not something we do toward ourselves, but between other people, and so it's a social act. And it's through gestures that we derive meaning between myself and the other person. And that's how he describes and defines meaning, that it's created that way, by convention, between people. And as we use that in society, we create that reality in society. And then the symbols, especially significant symbols, including vocal gestures, are what he described to be true communication, because we can share similar response and understand each other through that communication. So that's why true communication. to instead of a gesture, a physical movement won't always communicate a similar response. In fact, it probably most of the time will not. But a vocal gesture will, because it's a familiar thing that we have a similar response to. And then finally, the mind. He describes it as a mental process, meaning that it's not the actual physiological thing, like our mind anatomically, but it's a process that we are constantly using to create reality and society that we have. We can organize things in our minds. We can test out things mentally. We can problem solve. And so that's how that question is answered, of how society is created, or how it comes into being. We actually create that reality and that meaning and society that we have. Thank you.